My name's Patrick. I'm 33, and I make my living catching people who steal money electronically. Fraudsters, hackers, embezzlers. I've spent the last 8 years working in financial security for Draven Mark Innovations, and I can spot a pattern faster than most people can spot a typo. Lately, though, the patterns I was seeing weren't at work. They were at home. For the past 3 weeks, Sophia, my wife, had developed a habit. She'd wait until I was in the shower. Then I'd come out to find her at the kitchen counter with my wallet open, rifling through my cards. Sometimes it was my wallet. Sometimes it was my phone or the bank statements I left on the desk. Always with that same guilty little smile when I caught her. "Just looking for the grocery receipt from yesterday," she'd say, waving a random slip of paper. You know how I am about budgets. And I didn't know. I knew exactly how she was about budgets. We live in a house in Tampa that stretched us thin every single month. All because Sophia insisted we had to keep up with her sister and her sister's friends. They were the type of people who spent 2 weeks in Europe every summer, casually posting photos of wine tastings in Tuscany, while we scraped together enough for a weekend in Orlando. I toweled my hair and nodded toward the fridge. Receipts are pinned right there. Same place they always are. She set my wallet back down, but not in the same position I always kept it. Most people wouldn't have noticed. I did. In my line of work, it's the small details that matter. Small details are what keep you from losing everything. Sophia kissed my cheek, a quick brush of lips that felt more like a distraction than affection. "I'm going to call my mom about Christmas plans," she said, heading upstairs. I watch her go, then check my wallet. Everything looked normal: debit card, credit cards, driver's license. All where they should be. But normal didn't mean safe. See, in financial fraud, it never starts with a giant theft. It starts with access, with opportunity. Someone gets close to information they shouldn't have. They test the waters, memorize numbers, write down expiration dates, grab a security code when you're not looking. They start small, and if they don't get caught, they get bolder. Always. And the truth was gnawing at me. Sophia wasn't just being budget conscious. She was gathering information. And I had no idea yet if she was doing it for herself or for someone else. Someone leaves their card unattended, scribbles their PIN on a sticky note, or trusts the wrong person with account access. And that's all it takes. I'd seen marriages collapse over less. Husbands blindsided when they discovered their wives had been funding affairs with joint credit cards. Wives gutted when they realized their husbands had been gambling away retirement savings. Financial betrayal wasn't rare. It was common, predictable, and I was starting to wonder if I was living inside one of those case studies I used to warn clients about. That night, I sat in my home office with the door locked. The glow of my monitors lit the room as I pulled up the fraud monitoring software I normally reserve for client demos. If someone was going to tamper with my accounts, they weren't just going to leave digital fingerprints. They were going to walk straight into a trap. I built a honeypot, a fresh debit card tied to a fabricated account seated with exactly $60,000. Not a cent more, not a cent less. Enough to look real, enough to look tempting. The account was wired into my systems. Every transaction would be logged with GPS coordinates, vendor details, timestamps, and digital signatures. Nothing could happen without me knowing. I slid the bait card into my wallet, right where my real debit card normally sat, and waited. 3 days later, it was gone. I met Sophia 4 years ago in a coffee shop near the university. She was finishing her marketing degree and working part-time at a boutique downtown. Smart, ambitious, restless. What caught me off guard was how fascinated she was with what I did for a living. "You're like a detective," she told me on our third date, her eyes bright with curiosity. But for money. Back then, I thought it was charming. She wanted to know everything. How financial systems worked, how transactions were tracked, how I could trace digital footprints across borders. I even showed her some of my fraud detection tools, walking her through old case studies of embezzlement and theft. She absorbed it all like a sponge. 2 years later, we got married. A small ceremony, sensible budget. I thought it was perfect. She didn't. She wanted something bigger, something that could stand next to the lavish wedding her sister Vanessa had thrown. Vanessa had married a real estate developer. She lived in a gated house with a pool, drove a car that cost more than I earned in 6 months, and spent holidays in places most people only saw on postcards. At first, the comparisons were subtle, an offhand comment about Vanessa's vacations, her clothes, the restaurant she frequented. Sophia never said the words outright, but the message was always there. We weren't keeping up. And now, with that bait card missing from my wallet, I was starting to wonder if Sophia wasn't just envying her sister's lifestyle, but actively trying to steal one for herself. That I picked up freelance consulting jobs on the side, small contracts with mid-sized companies that couldn't afford enterprise-level fraud detection systems. Late nights, endless coffee, and more time in front of a laptop than I care to admit. The extra income helped, but no matter how much I worked, it wasn't enough to close the gap between us and Vanessa's picture-perfect lifestyle. Sophia started putting in longer hours at the boutique too, but oddly, her paychecks didn't grow. When I asked, she shrugged and said the owner had cut commissions. Retail was struggling everywhere. It sounded reasonable enough. I wanted to believe her, but the warning signs had been flashing for months. She'd started asking about my schedule, specifics about when I'd be traveling for client meetings, how long I'd be gone. She slipped in questions about bank protocols too, about how long it took unusual transactions to trigger a fraud alert. Always curious, always framed as harmless interest in my work. But I know reconnaissance when I see it. 3 weeks ago, the wallet checks began. Always when I was distracted, always with a neat excuse. Looking for a grocery receipt, checking for a business card, making sure I hadn't left anything important in my pockets before laundry. Plausible reasons. Too plausible. I should have confronted her then. Should have asked the hard questions instead of pretending I didn't notice. But in my line of work, assumptions get you fired. Only evidence gets convictions. The morning the bait card disappeared, Sophia made breakfast. Eggs, toast, coffee, our usual routine. She was all smiles, sliding a plate across the table as though everything was perfectly normal. "What's on your schedule today?" she asked, buttering her toast like she hadn't just broken into my wallet the night before. "Client meeting downtown," I said, watching her closely. She nodded. "I might go shopping with Vanessa later. Nothing too expensive." She kissed me on the cheek before grabbing her keys. You know how I am about our budget. I watched her drive away, that casual wave out the window, and felt the weight of the trap snapping shut. When I opened my monitoring dashboard, the bait card was already active. The first alert hit at 11:15 a.m. A single transaction, $500. A luxury boutique in downtown Tampa. My phone buzzed in the middle of my client meeting, the notification flashing across the screen. Standard fraud protocol. Anything over $300 triggered an immediate alert. But this wasn't just protocol. This was personal. Sophia had taken the bait that I excused myself from the meeting and slipped out to the parking lot, phone in hand. The fraud alert pulsed on the screen like a heartbeat. The transaction details told the story immediately. The card had been swiped at a boutique Sophia had mentioned just days ago, a showroom that dealt exclusively in high-end handbags and limited edition accessories. Not the kind of store where you browse. The kind of place that required private appointments and champagne service. 20 minutes later, another alert. $2,000. Same boutique. Then another. And another. By the time I grabbed a coffee and sat in my car, the total had climbed past $8,000. Each transaction was logged with the kind of precision my systems were designed for: GPS coordinates, merchant IDs, exact timestamps accurate down to the second. This wasn't random impulse shopping. This was calculated, organized, pre-planned. She knew exactly what she wanted, and she was working through a shopping list item by item. At 2:04 p.m., the pattern shifted. New alert. New merchant. A travel agency downtown. For $1,000. Airline tickets. I pulled the metadata, heart thudding as I scrolled through the details. Passenger information, destination data, departure time. Paris. First class. Tomorrow morning. By the time I drove home, I'd already confirmed something chilling. She hadn't touched our joint accounts. Smart. Dipping into shared money would have raised flags too quickly. Instead, she was draining what she believed was a separate reservoir. One I'd never notice, one she thought was unguarded. But it wasn't. It was bait, and she'd swallowed it whole. That evening, Sophia played her role flawlessly. She set the table, poured wine, complained about traffic like she always did, mentioned shopping with Vanessa, dropped small details to support her alibi. Her performance was seamless, warm, affectionate, and utterly fake. If I hadn't been watching her transactions unfold in real time, I would have believed every word. After dinner, she packed a suitcase. Vanessa invited me to a spa weekend, she said, zipping the bag shut. Last-minute thing. Her treat. We leave early tomorrow. I'll probably be gone until next week. I nodded, smiled, even helped her carry the suitcase to the car. Kissed her goodbye like the loyal husband I was supposed to be. She drove off toward her spa weekend. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Another alert. Airport parking. Tampa International. Long-term lot. And then, silence. The system logged nothing more for hours, but the picture was already complete. She wasn't leaving for a spa. She was leaving me 0.5:00 a.m. My phone lit up like a siren, notification after notification, rolling in faster than I could swipe them away. Hotels. Michelin star restaurants. Parisian shopping districts. Sophia was burning through the Debit account like a match dropped in gasoline. A European vacation at my expense, or so she thought. Every swipe, every charge, every late-night cocktail on the Champs-Élysées was being cataloged in real time. She wasn't stealing from me. She was writing her own indictment. I brewed coffee and settled into my chair, watching the alerts cascade across my screen. 8 years of fraud investigation had taught me one unshakable truth. Slow, steady evidence was bulletproof evidence. A few charges could be explained away. A week-long international spending spree funded by cards she had no right to touch? That was the kind of airtight case prosecutors salivated over. By the end of her so-called spa weekend, Sophia had spent nearly the entire $60,000. But the real beauty of the trap wasn't the balance. It was the system behind it. The Debit card was wired into more than just my private monitoring tools. Every transaction fed simultaneously into 3 separate pipelines. My personal surveillance software, Dravenmark's enterprise-grade fraud prevention network, international banking protocols designed to flag cross-border money laundering. By Tuesday, her spree had triggered scrutiny she never even knew existed. By Wednesday morning, Sophia wasn't just on my radar anymore. She was on theirs. The spending pattern was a textbook red flag. First-class tickets purchased on a card dormant for months, followed by a sudden storm of luxury charges across Paris. The kind of anomaly that set off automated alarms from New York to London to Zurich. Sophia believed she was free. In reality, she was boxed in by layers of security she couldn't begin to imagine. Agent Torres didn't hesitate. "She'll be stopped," she said, her voice steady, clinical. Best case, customs pulls her aside for questioning. Worst case, she's detained the moment her passport scans. Either way, her trip ends in an interrogation room. Her words landed like a gavel. I stared at the logs glowing on my monitor, line after line of charges, timestamps, vendor IDs, geolocation data. The evidence was so detailed it felt almost surgical. She hadn't just gone shopping. She had built her own cage out of numbers, each handbag and champagne dinner another steel bar welded into place. Torres cleared her throat. "Patrick, I need you to understand something. This isn't a domestic squabble anymore. We're past stolen wallets and suspicious credit charges. International transactions over 50 grand are automatic red flags. Her name is already moving through multiple systems: Interpol, Customs, Homeland Security. The moment she checks in for her return flight, alarms will go off. Wire fraud, identity theft, money laundering. Depending on how the prosecutor frames intent, she could be looking at 10 years minimum. Maybe more." I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. For weeks, I'd suspected. For days, I'd watched. And now the machine had woken up. Huge, faceless, relentless. Sophia wasn't fighting me anymore. She was fighting the weight of entire institutions. "What do you want me to do?" I asked finally. Torres didn't hesitate. "Nothing. Don't warn her. Don't interfere. The investigation is already in motion. And if you insert yourself, you risk contaminating the chain of custody. If she boards her flight, She walks into it on her own. Our people will take it from there. After the line went dead, silence filled my office. No hum of conversation, no sound of traffic outside, just the quiet pulse of my phone as alerts rolled in one after another. Hotel suites in the 8th arrondissement. A black car service from Charles de Gaulle. Dinner for two at a restaurant where a single table had a 6-month waiting list. I scrolled, watching the numbers climb. She thought she was living her dream, sipping champagne in Paris, dressing herself in borrowed silk and leather. What she didn't realize was that every charge was a confession. Every swipe of the card was another nail hammered into her own coffin. I made coffee, sat back down, and kept watching. The sun had set, painting the windows in amber light, and I thought about the irony of it all. Sophia believed she was outsmarting me, that she had fooled the man who built systems to catch liars and thieves. She didn't understand that I wasn't her enemy anymore. The system was, and the system never slept. Sophia thought she was living her best life. She didn't know she was living her last days of freedom. What do you mean? My voice cracked, sharper and louder than I intended. It echoed in the sterile conference room, bouncing off glass and steel. Agent Torres didn't flinch. She folded her hands neatly on the table, her posture calm, controlled. The body language of someone who delivered devastating news before and had learned not to get tangled in the emotions of it. Patrick, she said carefully, your wife's financial activity isn't unique to this week. The patterns, the passport stamps, even the merchant categories, they match with at least 2 previous cases flagged in Europe over the last 3 years. Both involve high-value spending sprees, luxury goods, and fraudulent financial sources. Each time, the accounts went dark the moment the money was gone. My throat went dry. You're saying this wasn't a one-time mistake? You're telling me she's done this before. Torres' gaze was steady, unwavering. Not just before. More than once. In fact, Interpol has opened files that strongly suggest a pattern. Milan, 2021. Barcelona, 2023. Both flagged for suspicious activity. 40,000 euros drained in Milan. Nearly 35 in Barcelona. Same stores, same sudden disappearances, same timeline. And then silence until now. It felt like the ground shifted beneath me. I gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. For weeks I had thought I was uncovering her secret, thought I had finally caught the betrayal that lived in the shadows of our marriage. But this wasn't just betrayal. It was a history, a trail of lies stretching years back. Long before I ever realized what she was capable of. Torres slid a thick manila folder across the polished surface. The edges were worn, the papers inside dense with printouts, photocopies, and stamped documents. With a numb hand, I opened it. My heart stopped. There she was, Sophia. Grainy surveillance stills from an airport terminal in Milan. Designer scarf draped casually around her neck. Rolling a suitcase I had never seen before. Another image, Barcelona, sunglasses covering half her face, but her smile unmistakable. She wasn't just shopping. She was thriving. Carefree. Radiant in a way I hadn't seen in years, if ever. I whispered, almost to myself. She was living another life. Torres leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. This isn't just about personal fraud anymore, Patrick. It's about international financial crime. Multiple jurisdictions, multiple flags. Once she's detained, and she will be, the prior cases come alight. That means enhanced sentencing. Wire fraud, identity theft, cross-border fraud, potential racketeering charges if prosecutors tie her to any known networks. This could put her away for a very long time. The words echoed my mind. Put her away. I thought back to the dinners we shared, the casual evenings watching movies on the couch, her laughter echoing through the kitchen. Every smile, every kiss, every story she told me about her day. How much it was real, how much was performance. She fooled me. I muttered, the words tasting bitter. Not just me. She fooled everyone. My friends, my family. She's been playing a role the whole time. Torres didn't soften. Patrick, people like her are practiced. This is an impulsive theft. It's calculated. She's careful, deliberate, and, until now, she's been successful. But the trail she's created this time is too large, too obvious. International databases lit up the moment her spending pattern escalated. She's already on watch lists. I closed the folder with a trembling hand. The manila cover seemed too light, too ordinary for the weight of the truth it contained. This wasn't the beginning, I said slowly, staring at the table. It's the end of a much bigger story. One I didn't even know I was part of. Torres leaned back, her eyes fixed on me. The question now isn't whether she'll be caught. That's inevitable. The real question is what you're going to do when she calls you, because she will, except it won't be from Paris. It'll be from a holding cell. The room went silent, except for the hum of the fluorescent lights above us. I felt hollow. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted with my life, wasn't who I thought she was. She was someone else entirely, a ghost wearing my wife's face. We found records of similar spending patterns going back 18 months, Agent Torres said, her voice measured, like she'd rehearsed this kind of revelation before. Different cards, different accounts, but the same signature behavior. Luxury travel, high-end shopping, first-class accommodations. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair, the wood creaking under me. My pulse was pounding in my ears. That's impossible, I said. My words came out hollow, mechanical. She's never traveled internationally without me. Torres didn't hesitate. According to our records, she's made 4 previous trips to Europe using financial information that wasn't registered to her name. London, Milan, Barcelona, Amsterdam. Always first-class flights. Always luxury hotels. Always funded through accounts she should never have had access to. The room tilted. I pressed my palms into the table to steady myself, but the world kept spinning. My wife, the woman who kissed me goodbye every morning, who swore she was spending the weekend at a spa with her best friend, had been living a second life across an ocean. My throat tightened. Whose accounts? Torres exhaled, flipping through papers. We're still investigating, but preliminary evidence suggests she's been pulling from multiple sources. Credit cards belonging to her employer, former roommates, even family members. Family members. The phrase made my stomach turn. She had stolen from people who trusted her most, people who never would have suspected, people who would never think to look at her twice. I staggered in my home office and pulled up my own financial records. My fingers shook on the keyboard. If Sophia had been running financial scams for over a year, there would be traces. There had to be. And once I started looking, really looking, the evidence screamed at me from the screen. Her paychecks from the boutique had been consistent, modest, the kind of wages that barely covered basic living expenses. But her personal spending, it told a different story. Designer handbags she claimed were gifts from Vanessa. Dresses from labels I couldn't pronounce, with price tags I didn't want to imagine. Dinners at restaurants where the wine list alone cost more than my monthly car payment. Meals she insisted Vanessa had covered. Jewelry and accessories that had appeared like magic. Always brushed off with a casual, Vanessa wanted me to have it. I had swallowed every excuse. Every lie. Not anymore. I grabbed my phone and scrolled to Vanessa's number. My thumb hovered for a second before I pressed call. Patrick? Is everything okay? She answered, her voice warm, unsuspecting. I need to ask you something, I said, sharper than I meant to. About Sophia, the spa weekends, the shopping trips. How many of those have you actually been on together? There was a pause. A long, uneasy silence on the other end. Finally, Vanessa said, Patrick, I haven't been on a trip with Sophia in over 2 years. We had coffee last month, but that's about it. What? Her words sliced through me like glass. The pieces locked into place with sickening clarity. Every spa weekend was a cover story. Every girl's shopping trip had been a solo European getaway, funded with stolen money. Every lavish dinner supposedly paid for by Vanessa had actually been siphoned from someone else's account. She had built an entire second reality on lies. Lies she knew I would never question because they came wrapped in the name of her best friend. My phone buzzed in my hand. Agent Torres again. I answered. Patrick, she said without preamble, her tone clipped, urgent. We've uncovered more details. You need to hear this. Just landed. Can't wait to show you everything. That was her last text. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Agent Torres. She's in secondary inspection now, Torres said. Customs found over $40,000 worth of luxury goods in her luggage, designer handbags, jewelry, expensive clothing. When asked about the source of funds, she claimed her husband had given her permission to use his credit card. And you told him? I asked. We're verifying her story now. Are you prepared to make a statement regarding authorization for these purchases? My answer was steady. I never authorized any spending. She accessed financial information without permission and used it to fund international travel and luxury purchases. That's what we expected, Torres replied. Her voice dropped lower. Patrick, you should also know she's carrying a second set of credit cards. Names and account numbers that don't match anything tied to your household. The notebook, the one I'd seen her scribbling in late at night. Even on her return flight, Sophia had been carrying evidence of her crimes. At 7:45, Torres called again. She's been arrested on charges of credit card fraud, identity theft, and international money laundering. The evidence from her monitoring system combined with the stolen cards she carried gives us a solid federal case. I close my eyes. What happens now? She'll be processed and held pending arraignment. Given the international scope and the total amount involved, she's looking at serious federal charges. The bait card documentation leaves no ambiguity about her intent. At 8:30, my phone rang again from a number I didn't recognize. Patrick, this is Sophia. Her voice trembled, frantic, but she still clung to a thread of entitlement. I'm allowed one phone call. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Can you come to the airport and clear this up? What kind of misunderstanding? I asked flatly. They think I stole money for the trip. I told them you gave me permission to use your card. Just tell them it was authorized and we can go home. I stared at the screen of my laptop. $59,700 in unauthorized charges stared back at me. A ledger of betrayal. Years of stolen financial information. A notebook full of credit card numbers belonging to strangers. Sophia, I said slowly, I never gave you permission to use any of my accounts. Silence. Then, desperate, Patrick, please. I can explain everything. I'm sure you can, I said. Save the explanation for your lawyer. I hung up and turned off my phone. The house felt quiet for the first time in years. Tuesday morning, the federal courthouse in downtown Tampa. I sat in the gallery as marshals led Sophia in. She wore an orange jumpsuit. Her wrists and ankles were shackled. The woman who had once paraded through Paris boutiques with stolen money now looked smaller, shrunken, her face pale beneath the fluorescent lights. The courtroom murmured as Assistant United States Attorney Michael Garrett rose to his feet. His voice was clear, authoritative. Your Honor, the defendant stands charged with credit card fraud, identity theft, international money laundering, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. He paused, letting the words weigh on the room. Each of these charges carries significant penalties, years, not months. He lifted a thick file of evidence. The defendant engaged in a sophisticated criminal enterprise spanning over 18 months. She systematically accessed financial information belonging to multiple victims, her employer, acquaintances, even family members. She used that information to fund luxury international travel and attempted to conceal her crimes through elaborate deception. The gallery was silent now. Every eye fixed on Sophia. She didn't look at me. For the first time, I wondered if she even could. I thought of her voice on the phone the night before, begging me to lie for her. And I thought of every victim whose name was written in that notebook. The weight of her choices had finally landed where it belonged. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace.